Many states around the U.S. have begun to reopen after the coronavirus pandemic, but what we're hearing now is that there's a strong possibility of a second wave. I'm joined again by Judyth Vary Baker and Ole Dammegard. Judyth, Ole, welcome back to the show. How are you guys this morning?
Just fine, thank you.
Me too.
Good to see you both. Judyth, people are going to recall our conversation from really the early days of the coronavirus outbreak. You had a lot of sensible insights and advice for people. And of course, everyone's going to remember you were a cancer researcher. You've got extensive experience in microbiology. What do you want to share with us today, Judyth? Are we facing a second wave?
We're facing a perennial situation. The fact of the matter is that this COVID-19 virus is going to settle in on top of the other pandemic viruses that are afflicting humankind. And remember, some HIV was injected into this. No animal could have put that in there. All right. And that means basically, as we've learned, unfortunately, you can get this virus, but you won't. Most people, not all, but most people will not be able to create antibodies against it that are of any use. They may have a high antibody count, but when it can come back. Get it again.
Huh. It seems like to lay people, at least to me. Sorry, Judyth? Yeah, something happened with feedback now all of a sudden. It seems to lay people like myself that at very least they have no idea what's going on with coronavirus. It seems like what they're suggesting changes from one day to the next. I saw a doctor on the news yesterday saying that there's been a huge uptake around the United States since Memorial Day, and they were saying that it was due to people going to beaches, that they needed to close the beach. They failed to mention that the other incident that occurred on Memorial Day was the murder of George Floyd, which prompted protests around the nation the next day. They didn't even mention that that was a possibility that people commingling at these protests might spread it.
All right, on the beach. You have UV sunlight coming down, destroys everything. One of the best things you can do is get in the water and wash everything off, right? The other thing, that UV light, lie down there and get some of that vitamin D3 into your body, kills viruses. So the last place that you should be banned from going to is a beach when there's sun. It's just absurd.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of misinformation.
Absolutely.
Do you know here in Spain you are not allowed to have like what do you call it, sunshades that are rusty. You're not allowed to play ball with each other. You're not allowed to pee in the water. You're allowed to go paddle boarding, no, board paddling, whatever you call it, but you're not allowed to fall in the water. And it's just we have.
Are you joking, Ole? You're joking.
No.
You realize that
you're not allowed to.
Water washes you constantly. Is going to carry it away. There's no possibility that you're going to get the virus in seawater unless you're sitting in a tub of it somewhere and everybody else gets into it. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Now, Judyth, you've told us in the past that you're living in Sweden. Your revelations in the book, Me and Lee, have in part caused you to depart the United States, but on a visit to the United States, you've been stranded here. The country of Sweden will not allow you to return.
That's correct. Not until, the United States won't let us leave. I can't even get my passport renewed.
Wow.
I mean, it's rather draconian, really, that why can't I get my passport renewed? What does that got to do with the virus? Because it doesn't mean I can use it, but why can't I even renew it? Mm-hmm. So we have this power grab here that's going on against our freedoms, and it's pretty obvious. What I'm concerned about is people are being given all kinds of different signals about what to do and what not to do. Like, I'm going to ask both of you, what do you think about masks? What are you supposed to do?
I don't want to wear one, and I don't.
Well, you're going to get a lot of carbon dioxide. You're going to be rebreathing your own breath. That's going to lower to some extent, the oxygen that gets to your lungs, what good is that for you?
Right.
Actually, think about this. So doctors, when they're operating on someone, they're wearing the mask. That's so that they do not contaminate the person they're working on. You don't have the person that's lying there with the disease on the table with a mask on that they're operating. So just use common sense. If you have it and you have to go out, wear a mask so you don't expel any, any of that into the atmosphere. That's all. Keep it to yourself.
But also now, if you go to the World Health Organization, their website, which is not an organization that I support, but at their official website, you got videos that say you should not wear masks, except if you are a carrier or a carer. And so they recommend you. But here in Spain, they're trying to make it mandatory anyway. Yeah. So it's so conflicting, this information.
I almost feel like it's a religion, Now everybody's going to have to wear masks and veils and just let their eyes show, We have the right to get in the sunlight. Frankly, the more sunlight get on you. Now, here's what I don't know whether I mentioned last time about UV, that is ultraviolet, germicidal ultraviolet lights. And I've put a lot of this in my COVID-19 booklet that people can get. They can order it. I'm sorry I have to pay something for it because it's a long story, like surviving in the United States, with no way to, I'm having to go to an apartment now and pay for the rent. Well, I also have to pay for where I stay in Sweden so I don't lose it. So,
wow.
Anyway, for like $10, if somebody doesn't mind doing that, to PayPal to the real Judyth Vary Baker at gmail.com, they can get 38 pages of information about COVID-19, plus a lot of the Corbett report that tells you about Mr. Gates of the ID 2020 060606. And I'll bet Ole has a lot to say about that.
Oops, we got you on mute, Ole.
Scary, scary agenda, that's what I say.
It is scary.
Yeah. Now, Judyth, there's another researcher who's come forward through this pandemic who tells a story that's remarkably similar to yours. A lot of people have seen the testimony of Dr. Judy Mikovits, who describes how there were cancer-causing viruses in some of the vaccines that she was researching, how the HIV vaccines that she was researching under Dr. Fauci and various other professionals contained tons of coronaviruses, was leading to a lot of chronic diseases, including chronic fatigue syndrome. You've told us on this show before how as a young science prodigy, you were recruited by Alton Ochsner, a man whose name is now associated with the largest hospital system in Louisiana. But what you've told us is in the 1960s, when you thought you were being employed to cure cancer, you were actually being used to weaponize cancer.
Absolutely.
Judyth, are we experiencing biological warfare right now with this COVID-19?
Well, let's look at it a little closely. The great and important people in the world that are in science, literature, that run the country and all, they're older people, number one. And number two, they already have certain debilitating diseases or problems, maybe heart problems or whatever. It's very interesting to me that this coronavirus, instead of working like the flu does, it just grabs everybody, rather indiscriminately, seems to focus on elderly and, of course, the weak. But the elderly, we're having some amazing wipeouts of important people. On top of that, also, it seems to affect Black and minorities. It reminds me of the SB40, well, what we worked on, I'll just put it that way. The fact that in the past, at least, the HIV seemed to target homosexuals. That's where it began, the fringe groups. In this case, people who are dirty or old seem to be the ones that are affected the most. What I really want to point out is that it looks like evidence that this really began in the United States in a bioweapons lab, either North Carolina or both, there and a few other places like Fort Detrick. And why do I say that? Because we have Wuhan epidemiologists and bioengineers. They're there, and they get this Chinese anti-sentiment going. And what do we have going on? They are sent back to China. Where do they go? To Wuhan. And we're supposed to believe that this thing started in the market, the animal market near Wuhan, back in February.
Yeah, it was very interesting, Judyth. When I spoke with Dr. Mikovits, another aspect of her story that reminded me exactly of what you've told us, because I had been presuming that someone used a CRISPR machine or something like that to splice these glycoproteins into the COVID-19. But what Dr. Mikovits said is that it's also possible that they could be cultivating these viral cells on bat brain cells or other bat living cells, like you said.
Yes, because that will make it look like it came from nature. That's really the only reason. All right. But the HIV is a giveaway. All right. That's no bat is going to, unless we're talking about vampire bats, it's not going to happen. And of course, those weren't. So we have the other thing, however, is that I don't want to put Dr. Mikovits down or anything like that, but there are certain areas there of conduct. I know she was very frustrated. That's what got her into trouble, trying to get lab books. I understand about lab books because when I was at Peninsula Chem Research and I started crying because Lee was, he was arrested. Kennedy was shot. It was one of the worst days of my life. And I started crying. It splashed all over my logbook. So what I did is I wiped it and that messed it up. So I had to rewrite it. That you never can do. Never can rewrite anything in your lab book, your logbook. And that got me in a lot of trouble. It's so easy. The logbooks belong to the company. She needed evidence, that of what had happened. But removing them, I don't know what I would have done.
Well, she's denied. She's denied that allegation, and the books were never found in her possession. So, but let's leave that part of the story.
Well, they bring these things up about logbooks, but there are other ways. I was going to say there are other ways to prove what she's talking about, and it comes from your knowledge, your personal knowledge, and you can look up. You can predict what's going to happen because you know this material so well. So when you were talking about resurgence of this virus, of course it will. It's cyclic. It's sensitive to ultraviolet. So in the summertime, it cools down. In the winter, when everybody stays in. So what do they ask us to do? They tell us to stay inside. That cultivates it. Absolutely cultivates it. I implore everybody to get. It's the FAR UV. You want to get the germicidal lamp. You can use it easily to on your body, on your clothing, everything. Pass over it. Don't keep it on your skin very long or anything. Don't look at it. It kills everything. It really does. They're now starting at last to put it in use in hospitals, in trains, and they need to put it into the ventilation systems where, you don't have to see it and so on. We can kill this stuff. The other way, and I want people to know this, you just put food or anything you get that you worry about, especially fresh vegetables or anything fresh. Sorry, you can put them in the microwave for 15 seconds and kill any virus on it. You can put it in the oven at 185 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 70 degrees centigrade. In 2 minutes, it's dead. So it's the heat can kill this. Keep it in your car with all the windows up. Keep your food in there.
Oh, it might go bad.
For now. And Burger King, and you can eat. So it's not going to spread that easily. they made a big deal about how contagious it is. It is contagious, but you have to spit on each other, you know.
Judyth, along the lines of what you're saying with UV light, a couple of weeks ago, President Trump suggested as a possible treatment UV light. And everybody laughed at him and said he was an idiot. But just a week ago,
very wise. That was wise.
It's come out in Newsweek that Russia's actually developing a coronavirus treatment that would disinfect the body with ultraviolet light from the inside.
Actually put it down your throat, you know, and it'll fluoresce with the right wavelength. Now, some people are buying these without looking. You don't want to have ozone. Now, that's within if you're looking at nanos, okay, your wavelength. You don't want to get 200 or over. That's not what you want. If they're producing ozone, that's not good for you. Anybody that tells you ozone is good for you to breathe, they need a lesson in, you know, chemistry and clinical physiology, frankly. So you want to get them, use them. It's pitiful. I've seen so many people say, "Oh, I'm going to be just fine," and we have whole families come down with it. Because once it gets going, what do you do if somebody in your family comes down with it? You're going to wash and you're going to dry those sheets really well, and the bedding and all that. You're going to take your mask, and you can use it over again. Just iron it. That heat kills it like crazy.
But Judy, can I ask you? I'm really confused because some researchers and really skilled doctors, they say viruses are not alive, and other people say they are. That bacteria.
Watch out for this. Here, let me put it like this: a virus is a piece of life, but it's not alive. But it's like you ever put a crystal, want to grow crystals, and you just put these little things in, all of a sudden all these crystals build up. Have you ever seen those cute little crystal gardens? And they come from just little tiny pellets. When the water hits it, wham. Well, what happens when this virus hits something that's alive, if it hits the right part of the RNA or DNA, it'll trigger it and it will explode. Now, is it alive? Well, once it gets inside of you, you darn well might call it alive, because it'll pick up your DNA or your RNA or whatever, all right, and use it, and it's alive then. But the other time, you think of it as a spore, something that just has to be triggered before it can actually react. And
it's more like the carrier is the alive thing. The virus is like something that attaches to a live entity, and then that's how it's spread. Is that?
Well, it attaches the same way, like a puzzle piece. I mean, it happens to be formed in a certain way so that it will attach. Once it attaches, it can then take the living element, the essence of that cell, and become basically alive itself. Anybody that tells you that they're not alive, but anybody that tells you that they don't exist, which I've heard that as well. They haven't seen them under electron microscopes, I guess. There you go. See that little guy you just showed? That's one.
Yep. But this is obviously a computer animation of one. I think Ole is referring to Dr. Andrew Kaufman, who previously told us that no one has ever proven that a virus exists.
That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, doctor, whoever you are, I will confront you, because we have photomicrographs where you can see, a virus fragment, and then when it hits a cell like this. Now, what you have there is bacteriophage right now.
Yes.
That picture that you had. Or what they call today bacteriophage. They keep changing how you pronounce it, but at least it's spelled the same way.
Right.
That little guy is easily engineered to go in your bloodstream, and you can actually make it attack cancer cells. See it? Now, there'll be thousands of those on one cell. There's like little mosquitoes. And anybody tell you that little thing isn't alive and acts like it's alive, and it certainly, you'll see 1,000 of them maybe on a cell, a big cell.
And isn't it injecting its messenger RNA into the cell to disrupt
it can. Of course, it's going to inject material inside, but that's not what it's really doing. It really is taking on material. itself as well. Of course, it's sort of like laying eggs, I suppose you might say, because it will replicate itself inside there. It'll look just okay. So,
Right.
there you go.
Well, a lot of people are concerned, Judyth, about this new messenger RNA vaccine that's being developed by Moderna. And certainly no one's ever tested a messenger RNA vaccine like this proposal from Moderna before. What do you think about this mRNA vaccine?
Well, people that go to the Corbett report there, where you see Bill Gates says we've got to do this in 18 months. And you see huge investments. He's pumping money in. Anybody that thinks that Bill Gates is such a wonderful guy he's doing all this out of the goodness of his heart. He was valued at 50 billion. Now he's at 100 billion. So he's doing pretty well with all the money he keeps giving away. No, he has his, the reason I think that he's doing this, though, of course, about his father, who was head of Planned Parenthood and was a eugenicist.
Yeah.
And believes in, of course. Now, when you look at the enormous hordes of people in Africa and so on, it's true, our planet can be destroyed if we don't. I would like to see many jet planes dropping tons of birth control pills and let women decide for themselves, what to do. It's their business. It should be their decision. Where we know where people have access, like in Sweden and Norway and places with access to birth control, the population stabilizes. It doesn't keep exploding, incessantly. But anyway, I'm off the point. Bill Gates and co. and Dr. Fauci and this whole group, they're intimately connected. There have been complaints that you cannot actually do any research without being involved. No matter how you look at it, their fingers are in everything. It's a worldwide consortium. And if they say that we have to have the vaccine ready in 18 months, it will be, no matter if it's ready or not. The other problem we're going to see, and it is that there's no way that when they tell you that it's ready for pregnant women, for babies, for children, for elderly, and they want everybody, that's the signal that you're being forced to, they're using the whole population as guinea pigs, really.
Wow.
And when they said, Gates said, well, we could lose 300,000 people because among millions, you're going to have some bad reactions, or they will claim they got hurt, and can't. So they did pass a law that we can't sue anybody when you're forced to be given this vaccine.
Yeah.
The law has been passed. The other part of it that concerns me very much is the fact that whether it's facetious or just a joke, but the idea that the Gates Microsoft Corporation, all right, Gates-backed corporation, has created the ID 2020-06-06-06 patent. And this is something I bet Ole knows a lot about himself. But when you read about it, they say that you can carry it with you like a smartwatch, or maybe it will just be injected in you in little seeds here and there. But the whole idea is you'll be given tasks to do, work to do. And as you work, not only are you producing something, what the company wants, you're going to be paid for it. I think eventually the pay will be that you'll have a house or a little cubicle to live in. You'll have food, you'll have water. Okay.
Yeah.
Why am I talking about this? Because tracking, tracing is one of the things that will do. And that links to what they're talking about when you're going to get the COVID-19 vaccine, that they will be, they are, I think there are 30,000 trackers right now that are being trained. So because if you get it, they want to make sure that you're isolated and that the people you were around, they get isolated. Hey, we're going to be right back where we started with. And if somebody says you've got it, how are you going to prove that you don't have it if you have no symptoms? Anybody can be labeled that they have the virus, and that you're asymptomatic, but you'll still have to go home. If they don't like you, and let's hope a nurse likes you, okay? just doesn't decide, I don't like this fellow, I'm going to isolate him and say he's got it. Or if he's got
Judyth, there was a
yeah,
very
I know
interesting
that's
article, article in True Pundit just the other day that revealed that Bill Gates had arranged a $100 billion government-backed contact tracing contract in August of 2019. This was worked out with Representative Bobby Rush, who is a Democrat and a former member of the Black Panthers. He's proposed Bill H.R. 6666, which is
That's
the Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone Act. This is the Contact Tracing Act.
All right,
and
now,
it's
this is what gets me about these sixes. And Jason, this is something interesting. There will be a lot of Christians, all right, who will reject anything that has that 666 mark on it.
Yeah.
Now, the way I see it, this is being done on purpose so that you can get a whole group of people that are, like Christians or whatever, objecting, considered as fanatics. As they say, no, they have also passed some regulations saying, in this case, even religious objections will not matter.
Yeah.
This is going to pre-select a whole group of people who are not going to like the idea of 666 and say, I'm not going to take it. And then they can be labeled fanatics and take their religious freedom away from them, whether they decide whether or not they can have any thing to say about what's being given to them.
And that's already happening. They've closed
This has
churches.
to be on purpose. That the chances that was accidental is nil. There, it's just not possible.
Ole, what do you think of that? 666.
Oh, gives me the creeps. I'm not Christian, but it's a very satanic number. Actually, it's a very beautiful number, but it's been hijacked by these occult forces and turned it around against us. So
well, now they would use that and that would point out Christians, and that will get rid of that a huge segment of the population that is anti-vaccination. It'll just, mark and say, oh, you've reacted to this silly number, and that's not good enough. That's not a religious objection. So it's like they're being set up in advance. And of course, I object to any kind of vaccine that is forced upon anybody. The collateral damage to me is not worth it. By the way, if you want to get I hope you get it from me, because we're starting a new publishing company. We're going to have the book come out as a second edition. And
great.
So if you get the book from me, you will also get in the email, you get a lot of updates.
So what's the best way for people to order the book, Judyth?
Yes, because otherwise this way we'll never get, it's been 10 years and we need the book to reach more people. And especially the fact that most 10-year-old books go nowhere. This is still selling very well. It's not that, but we need funds in order to do a second edition. It's too long.
Right.
So they can go to the real Judyth Vary Baker at gmail.com for $35, get the book, and they'll also get in the email updates that will be in the second edition. That'll help us to get a second edition that is completely able to reach a lot of people with a lot of new information, because the book already had 100 pages missing. How can we even add more without doing a lot of, so I'm kind of got the independent, in order, just like you, Ole, you have control of your book.
Yeah.
And I love Chris Milligan and I'm grateful for everything. But it's been 10 years, and it's time 11 years, actually. It's time for a new edition. And I need to have more control over it, because some key things missing from that first edition, it's a real shame. Like I would have mentioned Cruz, and I wasn't able,
What is it that you would have mentioned?
Well, you have, we called him Raffaello, but Rafael Cruz.
Cruz, yes.
See, and that was too, we don't want to put that in the book, things like that. All of that is going to be in the new edition,
Mm-hmm. And for people who haven't seen you before, Judyth.
It's not my publisher's fault either. This is editors doing it,
We've got a lot of new viewers on Crowdsource The Truth who perhaps haven't seen you before, and I just want to bring everybody up to speed. You've written the book, Me and Lee, which is about the time that you spent in a romantic relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald while you were working for Alton Ochsner there in New Orleans in the early 1960s, just prior to the JFK assassination. And, you know, Rafael Cruz reference, of course, this came up during the 2016 presidential election, where Donald Trump mentioned that Rafael Cruz was photographed with Lee Harvey Oswald outside the International Trade Mart in New Orleans in the summer prior to the assassination. The president and the Inquirer failed to mention that Rafael Cruz is also pictured here in the crowd with the founder of Alpha 66, Antonio Veciano.
Unless that's been inserted, I have to agree, you know.
I don't think it has. This picture's been around for 56 years.
Well, one thing is certain. They brought in Raffaello, as Lee called him. I don't recognize faces very well. It's awful. I can walk right past. Lee did not want me to miss this face because he knew I was very worried about his safety. He almost got all beat up on Canal Street. And it was close. The police came just in time. A big crowd. They were going to beat him to a pulp. Let's forget about the staged thing that was going on, pushing him around, you know. And knocking all his papers down and stuff like that was staged, but it was going to get really bad. So I was very worried, and they moved it to Canal Street, where there's still a lot of they're looking for Castro's spies, you know. So they were all around there. Lee was doing that. It was part of an FBI sting to see who would take these flyers, you know, pro-Castro, you know, hands off Cuba flyers, walk away with them and not look at them disgusted and throw them away. If they held on to them, but number one, if they then responded and tried to go to a meeting or to a lecture or to one of these addresses, and they never held one meeting, never had one lecture, but they'd show up, but they were being surveilled. So when they left, they didn't arrest them there, but they waited till they went somewhere else. Then they arrested them and found out what their credentials were and deported a number of them. Why did they do that? Because we did not want to get killed. This was part of the David Ferry saying, it's not like the movies. Castro can't go around and kill everybody. But Lee was there to help protect us. And by getting rid of a lot of these various spies, he did it 3 times in New Orleans, all right, for different reasons. You can read about it in the book.
And this is essentially 1963 contact tracing, isn't it?
It really is. And what happened every time they arrested several, they changed the address. This is why you have the address that starts out with 544 Camp. It wasn't because Bannister was upset, because when they got enough arrests, they changed the address because that would tip them off. They'd never go there again. Yeah. Okay.
And Judyth, you're a wealth of information on this topic. I definitely recommend that people purchase the book, Me and Lee, either by emailing you or going to wherever books are sold.
You go to PayPal and use that email address, the real Judyth Vary Baker at gmail.com for $35, and that'll make it possible for me to get more books out there. And we're going to have a wonderful time with this new book. Yeah.
Well, let me focus you back on the things that you learned while you were working in cancer research and discovering the simian virus 40. Do you see parallels today with what was happening back then in the 1960s?
You see how easy it is to make a biological weapon. It only took us back then, and we were talking about 55 years plus, you know. It only took 2 years to create that. Interestingly enough, people have said, well, where's the linear particle accelerator that was used? Even though we could point out the building and the extensive heavy-duty electrical power that was, pumped into that building.
Upgrades and things that they had to put in there?
Well, it was gone itself. It was missing. You know, they removed it. Well, we have Dr. Jack Kruse, Kruse, who worked with Dr. John Ochsner, and was there not long after Alton Ochsner died. And he had to do some work there, internship. He goes down into the basement, and he is on record now. We got him on record just a couple of weeks ago. The linear particle accelerator was in the basement of Oxner's own clinic.
Wow.
Over there. Yes, that's where they put it. And he's wondering to himself, what in the world, why did this mega $1 million thing here when they're not even using it?
Why did they have that?
Well, they brought it there to hide it. They're not going to throw something that
But
like
what
that
was the
away.
purpose of the linear particle accelerator? I know it's spoken about in Dr. Mary's monkeys.
You have a very powerful beam here, so powerful that you could split it into 50 small beams. So you could actually radiate, for example, 50 to 100 mice at once, just by dividing these rays. That's for one thing. And it all get exactly the same. Do you realize how fast you can do that? Remember, we were processing like sometimes 500 mice a day. Now,
but I mean, isn't a particle accelerator gigantic?
Well, sure, but this was too. There's one. You've got one there. And it's on a site. That one that we're talking about was like 3 stories high and went there. But I'll tell you, Oxner's Foundation, this hospital, it is gigantic. And the basement down there is enormous. Okay.
And the general public has no idea that there's a linear particle accelerator at the Oshner Medical
Well, I don't know whether it's still there. It certainly was some time ago when Dr. Cruz contacted me when he read about what I had in me and Lee. So,
wow. So that's amazing.
We keep amassing witnesses. Well, going back again to the virus now, what are we looking at? This thing will stay with us. When I see that they have done nothing really substantive to control flu deaths, all right? And recently, and I've just posted this on my Facebook page, Judyth Baker, about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, we're talking about, oh my goodness, at least 39,000 people are dying from it a year here, and hundreds of, every day you get this. And yet we do nothing about that. It is also an epidemic. And what do we do? I want to tell everybody here, please just visit my Facebook page, okay, and look it up. Here you're going to see that diet can make an enormous difference. And there are so many people who get cancer. They just came out with the fact that chicken is actually directly linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma of things. Yeah. And
but isn't it?
What are we going to be able to eat? I mean, you wouldn't believe how many things we should
But is
avoid.
it just chicken, Judyth, or is it chicken that's been treated with certain chemicals and drugs?
That's the point. First of all, we're eating way too much meats. Not that we shouldn't eat meat. I firmly believe that we evolved to eat a whole bunch of things, and we're omnivores, and our teeth prove it. But we're and also people with blue eyes like you have, Ole, and the light skin, you're glacial. That is 6 months of the year you were surviving on just meat, dried meat, dried pemmican, maybe something like that, because there was no way to eat anything else because everything was under snow, under the glaciers. And as you go further south, understand that people up in the glacial area, what do they have? They have so many problems with gluten. That is the grains that, like wheat gluten. The further south you go, the more problem they have with lactose because that's a meat-derived product. So you can see that each area evolved to have its own needs, met. Because if you can just pull something off a tree and eat it, you don't have to eat meat, You go to grains and things like that.
But you raise a very interesting point, Judyth, because people around the world and even within our own country are so different. For Dr. Fauci or any medical professional to prescribe some prophylactic measure for everyone without examining.
One size fits all.
Right. Nothing's done that way.
That they want to foist a vaccine on us that, how do we know the proper dosage for an infant compared to a 75-year-old person who is obese and weighs, 400 pounds or whatever? So it's just ridiculous. What they're doing is dangerous. And we have every right in the world. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing an incredible job of exposing a lot of this. The haste doesn't only make waste. It is a way, really, I believe this is all about tracking and tracing.
Right.
Look at the power these people have had. An entire world crawled into their holes and played dead, turned over, you know, spot, play dead. And there you sit. When can I get up, master? When can I get up? When can I go outside, master? Look at the power that these scientists have. This is a way to get anybody to do anything on the basis that it's dangerous to the rest of us if you don't do such and such. So they have found a way to take control of our bodies and our lives. And this is going to cause a backlash against intellectuals, and the anti-intellectual backlash will occur. We're going to have books burned, we're going to have clinics burned down, all kinds of things, and that's not good. But the point is they've taken power that they have no right, because it put us all. How many times, Ole, were you allowed to go outside and go shopping in the last 3 months?
Well, now we're fine. We can go in, but otherwise than that, it was once per day. You needed to shop for more than 30 euros. You know, so you need to be able to show a ticket, because otherwise they thought you might go several times. It was just ridiculous.
So you have to show a ticket in order to buy and sell. Think about that.
Well, your receipt, proof of where you're going and all this, it's really become draconian. I want to stay on the virus for just one more second, because Dieter is asking us in the comments about, I mean, this was in 1955, so you were a young girl, but Alton Ochsner famously injected this Bulber polio vaccine, or administered it somehow to his grandson.
Incident. Yeah, Cutter Lab. And that material was tainted, of course, with the what they call the polyoma virus, and probably SV40 and others and all that. They'd been growing, of course, the virus, the polio virus that they made the vaccines from, on minced up, chopped up monkey kidneys that they just grabbed from everywhere as if they were. Can you imagine that they didn't even check these things to see how clean they were? They just used the monkey, because it grew so fast and grew so well. You know, had to be pure, right? No. And so there's Dr. Ochsner, and he brings the press in, and in the operating room, it's an arena operating room, he injects his grandson, who's a toddler, and his granddaughter. And 1 week later, his grandson is dead because of it. So sad. The day after Ochsner injected his kids, his grandchildren, they had all these deaths, and they banned it in California. California can be right. How did that
not shut him down permanently? It seems like that would be a disaster for his career.
Well, Cutter, the guys there resigned, because we have we have Eddie, and we have others that showed that it was contaminated. They didn't listen. Why? Because they'd already put a lot of money into it, and they didn't want to have to get rid of all those doses. But look what happened later. 1963, we had 90 million doses of this material, again in nice, also sugar cubes, and 3 doses that you're supposed to take, and it was contaminated with SV40 monkey virus. And that stuff is contagious. It goes through mother's milk. It goes through bodily contact, bodily fluids. And if they would look at the various cancer tumors we have, again, under electron microscope, so you can see the viruses, you can find them, but that's expensive. But we know that from other work that about 60% of the tumors that have been checked about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, all right, had the monkey virus in it. And that stuff causes tumors in monkeys. Of course, it won't do it in us. Causes it in rats, won't do it to us. Does it in dogs, won't do it to us. Right.
Well, of course, it does do it to humans.
Well, it can, but it's a nascent. It's sitting in your system for a long, long time. Something else that does that, and I use that as an example. You get one of these sores in your mouth or something, and that's herpes, right? Well, that herpes originally came from chicken pox, the same kind of virus. And it'll stay in your system for years and years, maybe only just exhibit, a sore in your mouth or something. And then you'll get shingles. And that shingles will drive you crazy. It will go all over, your body, or all your eyes, or around, typically around. And it's the same virus, but now it is really causing dreadful problems just for quality of life, and it's a tremendous outbreak. And yet it was just a little sore at one time where it wasn't even showing at all. This is the same thing. You're carrying it, your immune system goes down, the right trigger occurs, and it explodes in your body. You get cancer. Where did that come from?
Right. And, the Ochsner Foundation is discussed in that 1955 New York Times article. Obviously, the Ochsner Medical Center, it's now huge. It's the largest medical group, I believe, in Louisiana. And it's interesting to me that even back in 1955, Dr. Ochsner was associated with a nonprofit foundation. We see a lot of foundations involved in what's going on right now. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, George Soros Open Society Foundation. It seems like these 501c3 foundations are a major component and have been for a long time.
It's a tentacle. That's why I hope that everybody will read this Corbett report, because it says, who is Bill Gates? Extremely important, because and I know, for example, let's go back to Ole. Ole, what is the situation? Are the children in Spain, for example, are they forced to take vaccines?
Not yet. They're trying to do it. They're trying to push for it, but they haven't been able to yet. And here, I must say that as far as I know, I mean, I live in a small little bubble, so I don't know for sure. But as far as I've been informed by people here, so many people are waking up to the dangers of vaccines, who Bill Gates really is, the whole scam with the corona. And yet, when you look at like mainstream media here in Spain, it's pumping with corona. I mean, it's non-stop. So we got, like, if you go out on the streets, there's like here in the city where I live, maybe 40% is wearing the masks. And yeah, so it's almost like you can tell who's watching mainstream and who isn't.
Right, exactly, by the mask. And Ole, you follow very closely what's going on in Sweden. We've been hearing in the mainstream news here in the United States that Sweden, Brazil, the countries that didn't do the lockdown are now suffering huge outbreaks. But just yesterday, Bloomberg News was reporting that the Swedish Prime Minister is hitting back at this criticism. What are you hearing, Ole? Is this real, or is there a huge outbreak in Sweden right now?
I would say I can only go from the information I'm being sent, so I can't say for sure. I'm not there, but I'm so suspicious about all of these things. Also, Stefan Löfven, the Swedish Prime Minister, he's a Bilderberger, so that's one you can't trust whatsoever. Right. But also, they're rolling out 5G now, big time.
That's a big problem.
And they've just started. They've gone live now in Stockholm, and I would very much suggest I believe it's the same in Brazil as well, that they've been rolling out the 5G while we've been in lockdown. That's how they've done it here on the Spanish coast. All of these towers have just appeared, especially at nighttime. And then, since the symptoms of 5G and the alleged coronavirus are very similar, then the second wave will have nothing to do with the virus. It will have to do with 5G, but it will be blamed on the virus, saying, look at all of these people falling over, it's the virus, but it's actually 5G. That is my...
I suggest a tiny bit of civil disobedience. They actually have to put these little mini towers in front of different homes and everything like that. And that's your property. It should have been. No, they put it on the easements. But the point is that how interesting it would be if someday we go out and sometimes during the night, somebody did it. All of them were knocked down. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yep.
But if they're all being traced because they've had vaccines, they'll know exactly who did it.
But I have a friend in Sweden who, what he did was, he's up in Sundsvall, which is a bit up north.
I love it.
He went to the local authorities asking who gave permission to erect these towers. And they didn't really know who to refer him to, but they did. In the end, that he got to a woman that was part-time employed from working from home. And she said, if I remember right, she said about 8 years ago, they just decided to let go of the permits. So it was it's a private deal between the house owner, the property owner, and whatever comes. So I say, I mean, here we're looking at possible military installations, weaponized technology that is just installed. If you approved of it, I don't think so. And so I would very much suggest, just like Judy, wouldn't it be very sorry not if those suddenly were torn down the same way they were built up illegally against us? I'm not saying tear them down. I'm saying find good ways of maybe neutralizing them, knitting socks or whatever, and cover them.
Of course, you use Faraday. You would use Faraday cages.
Yeah.
All that amounts to is you buy yourself some metal screen and you double it, okay, or even triple it. You put that over your windows. Here's the problem: this stuff can go right through. They have the technology now to see a dime on your desk inside your house just by driving by. They really do. Mm-hmm. And the lack of privacy, the fact that they are allowed to penetrate our homes, that should be against the law. It should not be allowed. The private property should be truly private. One of the things about 71.83 hertz, that's our level of how our body works, how it is in sync with the earth. 5G is so much lower. It's like it drags your body and your mind down, and it's very destructive. It's they say nothing's wrong with it, all right, but seeds won't grow. You can't get things to prosper. You have all kinds of problems that happen whenever you have 5G around, and they're going to say we're crazy.
Judy, can you say one thing about 5G that is good for nature?
For nature?
Yeah.
Well, when I go to airports and I see the tops of all the trees are burned out, you've got so many crisscross 5G going on, it's killing the trees. Mm-hmm. You could always spot where 5G is because the plants just can't, they don't have a chance. You'll see the side of a tree. One side will be green and the other side will be all dead. That's the beam going, right? So they actually, what they're doing is they're cutting down many trees. One, so you can't see the evidence. Two, because they do interfere. That's why part of the tree is still green and that kind of thing. It's destructive. They are going to do it. They say we cannot stop them. Why can't we stop them? Because you won't have any internet. You don't have a choice. Where I live, there is no choice. They installed it overnight where I live. Now, what have we done? We don't use Wi-Fi at all. We use Ethernet, but even along all the electrical wiring in the house is all zapped up for 5G. It goes right into your wiring of your home. It's all around you. So if you didn't know, you need to know.
Well, let me take you back to Brazil for a moment, because I think it is interesting that we're hearing now all this talk about a second wave, criticism of countries that weren't necessarily in line with the initial lockdown. It seems like this drum starts beating on the mainstream news in the United States and in Europe. There was this article in the Rio Times where Bolsonaro, who has been called the tropical Trump, perhaps a nationalist, a anti-globalist who maybe isn't in line with some of the other things that they want to have done in Brazil, but Bolsonaro has urged Brazilians to go to hospitals and film the bed supply much in the same way. I mean, I didn't film the bed supply, but we were observing the hospitals, and many people around the world started doing this. Pretty interesting to see these countries. We don't know. People in the comments are saying, how do we know if these numbers are true or not? I mean, we've been lied to.
Let me give you a good example, because my son's family, that is his divorced wife, this poor fellow, the grandfather, even though he's in the early 70s, he had to go to work, whether he wanted to or not, even though he felt horrible because he'd lose his job if he didn't go, all right? So he got it from somebody and he brought it home. He was horribly ill, just horribly. He gave it to his wife. She got ill, but not as horribly. And actually, this virus can pass through several people and get weaker and weaker, but don't be fooled that, you see what I'm saying? The first person, they got whammied, but what shed from him was not as bad for the next person and the next. That can make you think everything's fine, but this stuff mutates. Now, one of the things I'd like to bring up is about You're talking about how it can spread and everything about down in South America, is when you're looking at where it can break out, because we don't have good records. Their records are pitiful, because the same family I'm talking about, they had to get appointments to get tested. And the last person didn't even bother to get tested at all. Because why? You have to go into the doctor, and then you're exposed to everybody else, you're standing in line a long time. Lots and lots of people in Florida were not tested at all. And where I live, we tried to get tested because one of my autistic grandson actually got sick. We couldn't find anywhere to go get a test without getting a doctor's appointment, which took 2 days. All right. And then, by the way, we'd have to pay for it too, as far as that goes. But they already were so full, even we found one place we could go and get tested because we went out there and it was closed. And so there's no place for us to get him tested. None of us could get tested. And yet he was sick. Well, it turned out whatever he had, he's over it. All right.
Do we know if it was coronavirus?
We have no idea.
Could be flu.
Well, in his case, no, the symptoms were pretty unique, and probably, I think he had a case of it, But we use black light around here, and it'll kill it,
Right. And so back to the UV. I mean, Brazil obviously is sunny and hot most of the year. Certainly in Rio, there's a huge beach culture, frequently more people on the beach than in the city. I think a lot of people are very skeptical about some of this information that we're hearing, particularly from countries where we aren't.
Look what they can do with us with fear. Frankly, this virus, what should we be doing? We should be making sure we have a big problem in that if you zap up your immune system too high, you can get what they call you'll get an immunological storm, cytokine storm. You don't want that. See, you have to balance it, not get your immune system too high, or you can get terrible arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, and other problems can happen. So you have to balance everything. Well, that's not easy. So everybody should take a look at how they can make their diet a little better, and do the best you can to have a good, strong immune system without overdoing it.
Right. And that's just basically simple stuff. Don't drink a lot of booze, get as much sleep as you can, try to get some exercise, eat healthy food.
Hydrochloroquinone is another one, because they're saying, this quinine, if you are taking this, I'll say for me, you do what you please, and you don't take me as the expert or anything like that. But if I thought I was coming down with it, here's what I would do. I would take tonic water, which has quinine in it, all right? Anti-malarial, antiviral. It kills viruses like crazy anyway. Mix it with, you have 4 ounces of the tonic, okay? You mix it with frozen grape juice and mix it together. There's no bitterness. Drink it. I would do it again that night. I would do 8 ounces every day for several days, and I'm pretty sure I would feel just fine. But what they did with this, these same people who want you to have these vaccines, and they want you to have these expensive go-tos, okay, that they're working on, they make a lot of money, and they have patents on them, and they put a lot of money in. They don't want you to use this simple anti-malarial antivirus material that has been around for over 100 years and works just fine. So quickly, I'll just say this. Instead, they put it in the vets' hospitals and other places with people who are seriously ill. See, this works if you have zinc and vitamin C, but doesn't work later. In fact, it can harm you. So what do? They test it on people on death's door.
Who they know it will harm, people with heart arrhythmias and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot
Trump
of...
knows better. Trump is pretty smart because he started using it and they just got on his case. He really had to quit using it.
Really? I didn't know that he had to quit. Well, we've lost Ole. He had to go to another interview, and we're just about out of time, Judyth. I hope that people will email you on therealjudithbaker@gmail.com if they
it's
need...
the real Judyth Vary, Vary.
Oh, sorry.
It's very, very hard. I shouldn't have done it, but my original email got hacked, so I had to.
Oh, boy. But people should read the book, Me and Lee, for sure, and follow you on Facebook. Will you do a JFK conference this year?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, about the book. That would be through PayPal, $35, and it will help us. Indeed, we are going to have the conference. Now, we don't know how many people will still be alive. Maybe they'll all be dead, right?
Oh, I hope not.
Right. Oh, but yes, one of the reasons I am going to actually to make sure that I will be staying in the United States, and I want to meet all of you, and I love everybody. I want them to not have cancer. I don't want them to be afraid of this virus. I want them to have freedom and to love each other and stop separating us from each other and dividing us over the most ridiculous things. It's a shame. God bless you all.
And you, Judyth. It's great to have you back on the show. And I'm sorry that we couldn't say goodbye to Ole, but we'll be back with him very soon. People who want to learn more about Ole can go to his website, lightonconspiracies.com. I know a lot of people are aware, Judyth, that Ole and I do a show every Monday on Patreon and Subscribestar. People can see yesterday's episode. We were talking about this terrible incident at the Wendy's restaurant in Atlanta. There's so much chaos in addition to this coronavirus right now.
Tell you about
that.
Yes, this is important. You watch. You'll see the people that are causing the trouble are wearing backpacks. These people who are local are not going to be wearing backpacks. That is the clue that they were brought in.
Well, it's possible for sure. I mean, someone who's going to be spending all day out might have water and a battery charger in the backpack. I agree. I've seen a lot of people with backpacks, but I mean, even if you go 20 or 30 miles from home, you might need a megaphone,
a megaphone, a backpack, and they've opened backpacks and found rocks and bricks in them and things.
And I've observed around the protests here in New York City, people with megaphones, people with wireless transmission equipment. I mean, they're obviously coordinated. How could I get sound from somebody on stage to go to a wireless speaker if I didn't know what frequency they were broadcasting on and even share equipment with them? So there are a lot of signs that these things have been set up, and we keep our eyes on that. But Judyth, we'll have you back on the show very soon. I hope you can straighten out this situation with Sweden and everything goes your way. It's always lovely to see you. And thank you so much for being on today.
Well, God bless you. If anybody wants the COVID-19 packet I have, you can get that for $10. I wish it were cheaper, but just to survive. But this has 38 pages there of information I think can help people too.
Absolutely. Judyth, have a great day.
Thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Be well. I'll be back in just an hour with Bishop Larry Gators. People are going to want to tune into that. I'll see everybody then. Thanks for watching.